Welcome to The Art of Medicine, the program that explores the arts, business, and clinical aspects of the practice of medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Wilner, and today we have a very special program touching on spiritual health, a topic that we've addressed before. But before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, Comp Health. If you're a physician looking for a new job, or considering locum tenens for the first time, make sure to check out Comp Health. I've worked locums with Comp Health, and I appreciate the personalized experience I have with my recruiter, dedicated to my specialty, who knows my needs and goals. Comp Health also offers full-time permanent jobs if you're looking for a longer-term switch. For more information, check out comphealth.com. And now to my guest, who is a teacher, film producer, and has a very interesting journey that she's going to tell us about. Welcome, Dena Barnett.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you very, very much for having us.
Yeah, well, it's definitely my pleasure. I interviewed a few rabbis on this program because, I work at the hospital, and unfortunately, some people really struggle and some don't make it. And we use, I would say, as my practice has continued over the years, I'm more and more willing to get help from wherever I can. And that includes spiritual energy and faith. And so how well it works, I guess I don't know. But if it does work, then my feeling is, why not use it? So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in film, and then the movie that you're making now.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you in terms of whether it works or not. Daniel Benoit, who has been supporting the film since I spoke to him in Canada in 2015, and I asked him two questions. So the premise of the film is really based on what it is, what is spiritual healing, and how does it work. But before I sort of started on that journey, I was a caregiver for my father for many years. He was chronically ill. He was disabled. He was an alcoholic. He was also a Jewish agnostic atheist, which I understand that it does exist. You can be both. So, uh, yeah, I was looking after him for many years, as I said, and every day, sort of my world sort of revolved around healthcare and him, looking after him, making sure that he was okay. So we would open the door to doctors and nurses and doctors who misdiagnosed my mother's cancer, for example. Um, and so I had a lot of time in dealing with the care service in Great Britain to really understand how this works bureaucratically, and when you open the door to these people, how do they look after you? And it's both a good story and a bad story. You have good days and you have bad days as a caregiver. But I was not I didn't have a good experience. I had a very traumatic experience, and that led me to thinking more deeply about health and healthcare and medicine. Um, but Dad and I were sort of creative partners, and for many years we'd been trying to trace a family story that goes back to pre-revolution of 1917. So we
A
come
Russian
from
Revolution, not
a
not
Russian
not
revolution.
the
That
revolution
one.
we think of here,
No,
1776.
no,
That was
not the
very
current,
important,
not
but
the
this is
current
the Russian
pre-revolution.
Revolution in 1917. Okay,
Indeed.
so Russian roots.
Yeah, Ukrainian actually. So I'm quarter Ukrainian, and Dad heard a story that was told to him by his father and his uncle in a London flat many, many years ago, that traced this particular ancestor on my father's side to the last Tsar of Russia. He was a doctor that was born and possibly trained in Kiev. And our family on both sides are from a place called Zhytomyr, which is quite a spiritual place, which is something I'm going to be talking to the chief rabbi of Florence about this week, not this week, next week. Anyway, I digress. So we were trying to trace the authenticity of this story, and I became absolutely fascinated by the fact that this man would have had to mask his identity, his religion, and we assume that he sort of walked into the court, the imperial court in Moscow, as an imperialist, and then fled, survived the revolution, and walked out as a Bolshevik. And what we found out, what we do know, is that he did escape to Paris, and he diagnosed a syndrome, a medical syndrome, which took his name. So the original family, my family name was Babinski. And so that
Oh,
fascinated
well,
me.
Professor
Yeah.
Babinski is, I'm a neurologist, and of course, we check for the Babinski sign every day.
Wow.
And when I
Okay.
studied in France, I did 2 years of medical school in France. At one point, I did study with a student of Dr. Babinski. So, I mean, he is a
Yeah.
very famous name in
Yes.
neurology.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think if it is the same guy, it's not the same guy, because the timeline didn't fit. And
Ah.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it did fit, because I think in those days these records are very, very difficult to to locate, because whether the synagogues were burnt down, and you just can't trace Jewish records. A very, very difficult thing to do. And I tried to do that in London. I spoke to quite a few people that live in Stamford Hill, which is a huge community of Hasidic, Jewish people. So the other side of the story, which probably does make sense the way I'm telling it, and I apologize if it does, is that my father's father, my great grandfather, was a rabbi, and he was buried, or is buried, in a cemetery that is located where I was born. So my father, when he was really ill, still suggested that I go and trace the lineage back to this Dr. Babinski, to the cemetery. So I did.
And the
And
cemetery is where?
it's
Where
in a
is that?
place called Enfield, which is in North London.
Okay, so that's in the UK.
Yeah.
I just want to interrupt for a second. And
Sure.
today is March 10,
Yeah.
2022, and you mentioned the Ukraine, and there's a war going on now
I know.
in
I
the
know.
Ukraine that
Yeah.
we're all well aware of and kind of shocked by. Now, is tell us about the rabbi who had these curative powers.
Okay, so the rabbi that I stumbled on when I was looking for my great grandfather, his name was the Shotz Rabbi, and he came from a famous dynastic family of healers and miracle workers. And he wasn't a self proclaimed Kabbalist, but everything that he was doing as a very pious, righteous rabbi kind of led or leaned towards that.
Now,
So,
during his lifetime, did people
yeah.
come to him for healing?
Absolutely, they did,
They did.
in droves, and not just the immigrants actually. So his door was always open to all the displaced German immigrants, during the Holocaust,
And
survivors
where did he live?
in Stamford Hill. But he was originally from a place called Suceava, which is northeast of Romania. That's where his family originated from, and they were famous as healers and mystics. So I don't know how much, and I tried really, really hard to do as much research on him, the family, as possible. There isn't a huge amount. But what was really strange was that the day I was there with my videographer at the time, Giacomo, and I stumbled on two women praying to this man in this tomb. And it turns out one of them was the great, 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 great something, something granddaughter. And she invited us to her home where we interviewed her. So we've got her on footage talking about her great-grandfather, and the whole dynastic family, the Shots family.
Now, is the tomb, do people other than relatives, does anyone actually go there for
Yeah,
healing
indeed.
now?
They go from all over the world, but mainly Israel, and they're sort of literally bussed in on buses. They come like hundreds and hundreds. So we saw a mass of people, Hasidic, very Orthodox Jewish men and women. And if you've ever been into an Orthodox synagogue, you know that the men are separated from the women. And it's no different in a cemetery. And they go there without flowers. It's not the required or the right thing to do. What you do is you place a stone or a pebble on top of a grave site, and that's your way of remembering and sort of, letting that person know that you recognize that day and it's an important part of the calendar. You're there and you're saying thank you and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was amazing, and we saw all these
So
people,
this
and
continues
it goes
to this
on.
day.
Yeah, absolutely. Every Friday before noon, at the same time, they come. Either a few people or lots and lots of, like, hundreds. We saw hundreds of people on that day,
So
and that's
tell me about the movie. Where does the movie come in?
so the movie comes in because I was really intrigued by this experience, which I believe is called or referred to as Zaddic worship. So a Zaddic is a righteous, holy man or rabbi. And it's a really kind of popular thing amongst celebrities in the world. They will go and visit a grave site anywhere from New York to, Russia or wherever, Eastern Europe. And yeah, it's a big, big thing. It's not necessarily a good thing, and it's still seen as quite a controversial thing. So that made it even more intriguing to me. And I thought, what with my dad and the doctor and my great grandfather, it was all kind of twisting into some kind of weird thing. So I thought, I've got to meet a healer. I've got to actually speak directly to a healer. And the only experience I had with a healer was a family friend that we grew up with, who literally healed my mother's back, and it never returned. And this, I understand, might have something to do with cancer, but this was years and years before she had cancer.
But this is a non-physician healer.
Incorrect. Yeah, correct.
Are these
Yeah.
all rabbis, these
No,
healers? Not
no, but
necessarily.
I grew up with that kind of background. So I'm also, like my dad, I'm atheist Jewish. I'm not religious. And I found that even more interesting because, my mind was just a bit more open, a bit more kind of relaxed to, these ideas and these stories and these events. But they were all very strange. So I decided to do some research, and I contacted the Jewish Spiritual Association. That's not the correct name for this group, but I met a man called Aubrey Rose, who is in his 90s now, a retired human rights lawyer, an incredible man, who has been a spiritual healer, who doesn't charge for, I don't know how many years, 50 plus years. And he did it secretly in his office as a lawyer. And he would literally sit opposite his client, and instead of talking to them about legal issues, he offered healing, and he continued to do that. He's I think he's not doing that now, but he certainly has been in the last few years. And I said, look, I've just been to the cemetery. This happened. I'm not sure what to make of it. What do you think? I think I might be making a film. I'd like to make a film. I'm not sure. He said, come in, have a cup of tea, and let's talk about it. And that's exactly what happened. And from that day, it snowballed. It triggered off the film. I mean, meeting him led me to all the other people in the UK, and then later on different parts of the world.
All right, so when can I watch this film?
Well, there's a saying that when the film is done, when
All
it's
right.
finished.
Where are we?
Because
Where are we now? I know you got some scraps of footage here and there.
Yeah, we're at that stage where we're just finishing the last piece of filming with the rabbi next week. So we're going to film. His name is Rabbi Gadi Piperno, and he's based in Florence. He's the chief rabbi of Florence, and we're going to go into the Grand Synagogue and film him and talk about healing and what the world needs now, and so on and so forth. And then we're in post-production, and then we're going to try and get some funding and finish the film. But
is the funding mostly for marketing or
no,
for
funding
like?
is to pay for post-production, which if you don't know about the film business, is one of the most expensive and complicated parts of making the film.
Is that editing? Is that
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
editing and color
Graphics,
and
yeah, color grading, and making sure that the sound is like you do,
right?
making sure it's all
Yeah.
clean and tidy. Yeah.
Okay, so that probably takes like a year once you're all done.
No, it's a minimum of 3 months. It can
Three
take a
months.
lot
Okay.
longer. Yeah, you can double that, but a minimum of 3 months, 3, 4, 5 months.
All right, because you're going to send me an email when this thing is actually,
I'll send you all
in
the
the
relevant.
cinema or online or wherever it's going to be. And there is a trailer that I've watched, and I'll put link in the
Yeah.
show notes to the trailer.
What did you think of the trailer, Andrew?
Well, I'm a big fan of the ocean. In fact, your opening scene there looked very familiar, but I guess, big sandy beaches. I went to a
Yeah,
beach once in Belgium, and it looked like that. It had these long, long, sort of a
oh, interesting.
broad, a lot of sand that went, deep into the water. And there's
Yeah.
a beach actually in Rhode Island that it reminded me of. So I like the beach
It was
scenes,
quite
and
gloomy. Yeah, it was actually filmed in the winter, I think. It's in Viareggio, which is Viareggio. Is that the correct pronunciation? Yeah, not far from here. Did it?
okay.
Yeah,
Here
very nice.
being, where are you now?
Well, I live in Florence. I live in Tuscany, in Florence, in Italy,
Cool.
as opposed to the other Florence, which is in America, right?
Right. Well, we have a Florence, South Carolina, which isn't exactly
Right.
the same.
Yeah.
But Florence, Italy. Okay. I think, yes, I have not been there. I have
Yeah.
not been there. It sounds like worth
So
a trip.
it's beautiful, and you'd be very welcome, and let us know when you're coming so we
Great.
can prepare
Terrific. Yes.
a
Um,
nice a plate, yeah, some nice food for you. But the film was we filmed it across uh actually 4 different countries. So I originally filmed in London, so there's a multiple of crew that worked on each country over a period of 5 years. It's been independently funded with some help, and now it's got to that point where there's, yeah, just help.
okay. Okay. Before we
Right.
go, I'm just going to add a little story of my own to this because I've spent a lot of time in the Philippines doing medical missions and some scuba diving. I have a scuba diving channel actually, Underwater
Oh,
with
wow.
Dr. Andrew, and most of that's from the Philippines. But while I was there, I learned that the albulario is the local faith healer who
Oh,
you go to because you don't have enough money to go to the doctor.
right.
And I had met some of them, and most of them are, just pretty sort of straightforward. And if they sense that the person has something sort of, like a real illness, they
Well,
tell them, you need to go to the doctor. But if they sense it's sort of a mood thing or a family crisis, or I can't
intuitive.
sleep
Somebody
or
who's, yeah.
can't eat. But it turns out that there's an island in the Philippines called Siquijor, and Siquijor is famous for witches. And there are people, for example, in the Philippines who will not hire someone who comes from Siquijor because they don't want a witch in their house.
Right.
Um, and in April, there is a convention of witches in Siquijor
Wow.
who go because for whatever the potions they are that they make, they're considered to be more potent if they come from Siquijor.
Right.
So, and it has something to do with Easter and Christ between the time he's dead and resurrected. There's sort of a black magic window there. So I went to Siquijor to find a witch. And I spent a few days there asking around, and eventually I was instructed to go up into the mountains. And I did find two witches where that was their full-time job, to sort of make potions and cast spells. And some of the witches will cast negative spells as well as positive ones. So this does exist. And of course, with the internet, and the lack of, these are very isolated communities where people, having faith has a lot to do with the potency, and as you kind of contaminate your mind with the ideas from all over the world that flow in from the internet, I think that this type of faith might be harder to secure. But I just throw that out there. These are not Jewish people, by the way. These are the local, but there's a long tradition of that. And I suspect in many cultures, but I didn't realize in the Jewish tradition that there were, faith healers. Yeah. And I look forward to the movie.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
So, Dena, I want to thank you. But before we close, I'd like to give another thanks to our sponsor, Comp Health. At Comp Health, you can talk with a recruiter who knows your specialty and will actually get to know you and your goals. Consider starting your personalized job search at Comp Health. That's comphealth.com. Dena, do you have a date? Is there, is this going to be April 2023, 2024? How long can I wait?
I'll let you know.
All right. So, how are you raising the money?
Through film funding,
okay,
Kickstarter, and we have a new website under construction. But we would love to speak to people privately, organizations, anybody involved in the medical side of holistic care and healthcare would be amazing, because a lot of our contributors are people very, very well known in the community, including William Bankston and Larry LaShan and Lawrence Dosey, Lynn McTaggart, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. That's great. Now, before we close, I see there's a fellow there in the back. Oh, he's gone. But come back here. Come back here.
Marco, come and say
hello. All
right.
Introduce this gentleman. Who is that?
This amazing guy, this is Marco Ballerini, who's been working on this film, supporting me in the film for the last 5 years. Not 5 years, that's far too long.
All right. Marco, best wishes and good luck with this film. I hope to see it soon. Dena, Barnett, thank you very much for joining me on The Art of Medicine.
Thank you, Andrew. Have a great day.
This program is hosted, edited, and produced by Andrew Wilner, MD, FACP, FAAN. Guests receive no financial compensation for their appearance on The Art of Medicine. Andrew Wilner, MD, is Associate Professor of Neurology at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, Memphis, Tennessee. Views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this program belong solely to Dr. Wilner and his guests, and not necessarily to their employers, organizations, or other group or individual. While this program intends to be informative, it is meant for entertainment purposes only. The Art of Medicine does not offer professional financial, legal, or medical advice. Dr. Wilner and his guests assume no responsibility or liability for any damages, financial or otherwise, that arise in connection with consuming this program's content. Thanks for watching. For more episodes of The Art of Medicine, please subscribe. www.andrewwilner.com